We call the City Commission meeting to order May 3rd, 2016. I want to take a moment and welcome everyone that's here. Thank you very much for coming out tonight to our commission meeting. The first order of business is to call the roll. Let me ask the clerk.
Mayor Weissman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shelley.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Holtzberg.
Here.
Commissioner Landman.
Here.
Commissioner Narotsky.
Here.
Commissioner Weinberg.
Here.
Mr. Soroka.
Here.
Mr. Wolpen. Here. You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Evan Ross to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I don't think I've done this since elementary school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I want to see headset for that.
The first order of business we have tonight is the election of a vice mayor. I'm going to ask for a nomination for the position of vice mayor.
I'd like to nominate Denise Landman.
Commissioner Holtzberg nominated Denise Landman. Do I have any other nominations? Second. Can I have a second? Howard Weinberg. Any other nominations? Okay, then let me ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Landman.
Yes.
Commissioner Narotsky.
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley. Commissioner Weinberg.
Yes.
Mayor Weissman.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. First thing on our agenda, City Manager, are there any deletions or additions to our agenda?
No, we have no changes.
Thank you. We have two special presentations tonight, and I'm going to first recognize Indra Sarju. Can you please come up to the podium? Actually, I'm going to also ask that Elisa Hopkins come to the podium.
What we're doing tonight is recognizing two long-term employees that have been with us 10 years today, and they work in our finance department. The first one is Indra. And Lisa Hopkins. Thank you very much.
No pictures?
The mayor wanted me to share with the audience what our average term of employees are here. And we're fortunate because many of our employees stay with us for a long period of time. For example, our department directors probably have about 15 years of experience and tenure with the city. And many of our employees are up in that category, probably about 13 years on average. And the city's only been in existence for 20 years, so it says a lot about our employees and how dedicated they are to the city.
It also affords us a great deal of continuity, and it allows us to keep the excellence and the spirit that the city had from its inception. I'm going to ask if any member of the commission would like to remove an item from the consent agenda. Okay, seeing as there are none, can I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Vice Mayor Shelley. Well, Commissioner Shelley, I guess now. Lost your job.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Holtzberg. Can I ask the clerk, no items are to be removed. Can I ask the clerk for a roll call vote?
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg.
Yes.
Commissioner Narotsky.
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley. Yes. Commissioner Weinberg.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes.
Mayor Weissman.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. And I feel because we have so many people here for the first time that the consent agenda are all items that we've discussed and worked on in workshop, and we didn't feel they merited any additional discussion because we already agreed to them. So they've all been approved. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the resolutions and procedures for the quasi-judicial hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening we have one quasi-judicial zoning public hearing item as item 7. Any person who desires to offer evidence on this shall do so under oath. The quasi-judicial statement, which is set forth in the agenda, is incorporated into the record. After I read the title of this resolution, I'll ask the city clerk to administer the oath to any persons who desire to offer testimony on this item number 7, which is a public hearing, quasi-judicial item. Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Aventura, Florida, granting conditional use approval to permit lot coverage of 61.64%, where maximum lot coverage of 40% is permitted by code, and to permit floor area ratio of 2.0, where maximum floor area ratio of 1.39 is permitted by code, granting conditional use approval to permit a religious facility and school, granting variance to permit a minimum front yard setback of 4 feet, where a minimum 25-foot front yard setback is required by code, granting variance approval to permit a height of 47 feet 4 inches for the synagogue, where a maximum height of 37 feet 6 inches is permitted by code, all for an office building and religious school facility on property at 21001 Biscayne Boulevard, City of Aventura, proposed to be constructed under the city's Green Building Program, providing for an effective date. At this time, if the city clerk could administer the oath to any persons who desires to offer testimony as a witness in this matter. Thank you.
If you'll be testifying on this item, I need you to stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in at this time. If you will be speaking on this item, do you solemnly swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of the resolution. Commissioner Cohn made the motion. Can I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Holzberg. I'm going to ask that Joanne Carr present the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been sworn in. I would like to enter the staff report into the record. The applicant, Chabad House of North Dade, Inc., is requesting conditional use approval for increased lot coverage and increased floor area pursuant to the provisions of the city's Green Building Program, conditional use approval to permit a religious facility and school, variance to permit a front yard setback of 4 feet, where a 25-foot setback is required by code, and variance to permit increased height for the religious facility to be constructed at the easterly limit of the parcel. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use and variance requests with conditions that I'll read at the end of the report. Before I start, I'd like to correct a typographical error on page 3 of the staff report. It says that the site is a 1.77 acre parcel. That is a typo, and it should be the correct parcel size is 1.177 acres. Okay. I'll put up a location plan so you can see where we are. The site is located east of Biscayne Boulevard in the north part of the city, between just north of northeast to 10th Street, and I'll put an aerial up that'll make it a little clearer. The parcel is in dark outline. This is Biscayne Boulevard, northeast to 10th Street. This is the existing Chabad with its surface parking. This is the Best Buy store. The funeral home to the south, and the One Aventura Executive Center office building to the south as well. The hospital is directly across the street. The property is Zone B2, Community Business District. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing Chabad and construct a LEED Gold certified 10-story, 120-foot tall, 57,535 square foot office on the west portion of the site, an attached 5-story parking garage with 300 parking spaces to the east of the office building, and a 3-story, 45,000 square foot religious facility with 8 classrooms on the east portion of the facility. And I'll put up a rendering for you. bit more. This is the view of the office building. If you're looking north from Biscayne Boulevard, you see the office building at the Biscayne Boulevard frontage and the attached garage. And this is a view from Northeast 30th, where you can see the Abad. At the east end, this is 3 stories, the parking garage, and then again the office building. The pedestrian access to the office and the Chabad and vehicular access to the parking garage will be by way of Northeast 210th Street. No access is proposed on Northeast 30th. The parking garage has been designed to accommodate parking for both the office and the Chabad. And to comply with the Green Building Program requirements, there will be a rooftop garden on both the office building and on the Chabad. The applicant will be constructing intersection improvements. I'll put up the site plan. The applicant will be constructing intersection improvements here at Northeast 210th Street and Biscayne Boulevard. Also road improvements consisting of curb and gutter along the north side of the street and street trees as well. The applicant has also proffered the sum of $50,000 to the city as a contribution towards street lighting improvements here on 30th Avenue. Notice of this public hearing has been advertised, posted, and mailed in accordance with Section 3171 of our City Code. The first request is conditional use approval pursuant to Chapter 14 of the City Code and Section 31144C2 L and M of the city's land development regulations to permit lot coverage of 61.64%, where 40% is permitted by code, and to permit a floor area ratio of 2.0, where a maximum floor area ratio of 1.39 is permitted for a 10-story office building. These are the 2 development incentives that may be allowed through conditional use approval in our green building program. And that's for buildings that achieve either LEED Gold or LEED Platinum. They're proposing LEED Gold certification. They will be required to fulfill the requirements of the green building program, including entering into an agreement with the city to confirm registration with the LEED program, the proposed certification level, maintenance of the green design elements in the building, and provision of a performance bond in the amount of 5% of the estimated construction costs. In this case, the bond will be $1,015,000, which is 5% of the construction costs, estimated at $20,300,000. Staff has evaluated this conditional use approval request using the criteria in Section 3173C of the City Code and finds that it does meet those criteria. The next request is conditional use approval pursuant to Section 31144C2 of the City Code to permit a religious facility and school in the B2 zoning district. The existing religious use was approved by the City Commission by resolution in November of 1996. However, that resolution was specific to the development plans as it exists now. Since the existing facility will be demolished, relocated, and expanded, conditional use approval is required to renew that religious facility use and reference the new development plans. Staff has evaluated this conditional use approval request using the criteria in Section 3173C of the City Code and finds that it does meet those criteria. The third request is variance from Section 31144C5D of the City Code to permit a minimum 4-foot front yard setback, where a 25-foot front back is required in the B2 zoning district. And this setback occurs along Northeast 210th Street. The site is long and narrow. It's approximately 81 feet wide and approximately 634 feet long. The front yard is determined by the entrances to the building, which are both on Northeast 210th Street, thus this being the front yard. The 4-foot setback occurs at the office building, here, the garage, and a westerly portion of the Chabad building. The easterly portion of the Chabad has a 10-foot setback. The other setbacks here are 20 feet from Northeast 30th, 20 feet from the property line, which is not Biscayne Boulevard. There is a sliver of land that's owned by the funeral home to the south on Biscayne Boulevard, but they've kept a 20-foot setback there. The 4-foot setback does not occur at the ground level, and I'll go back to the elevation. The 4-foot setback occurs at an elevation of about 17 feet above the ground level. The ground level of the office building is an open-air plaza, and the lobby is to the north. So the pedestrian experience and vehicular experience here will be an open-air plaza. You won't have the building at 4 feet right at ground level. At the parking garage is 7 feet setback, but it has a 3-foot overhang that starts at 14 feet above ground level, again, so preserving that pedestrian and open view. The Chabad itself is set back 10 feet, so the minimum requested is 4-foot setback. Again, staff has evaluated this variance request using their criteria in section 3176E of the City Code and finds that it does meet those criteria. The 4th request is a variance from section 31144C5B of the City Code to permit a height of 47 feet 4 inches for the synagogue, where a maximum height of 37 feet 6 inches is permitted by code based on the distance to the adjacent residential zone. I'll put the site plan back up. Hold up a little bit. You asked Tony to blow it up, to enlarge it a little bit. There you go. Thank you, Tony. Okay. That setback occurs right here. What the B2 zoning district says is that when you're adjacent to a residential property, and this is Aventura Lakes right here to the east, you're allowed 1 foot in height for every 2 feet in distance from that residential zone. The building starts at 75 feet from the residential property line, so they would get half of that in height, which is 37.5 feet. They're asking for 47 feet 4 inches. Now they could have achieved that height if they had moved the building over here. There's a 0-foot setback required by code at the west end. But for safety purposes, it's always best to put a building as far away as we can from Biscayne Boulevard. So this is the reason that variance is requested. Staff has evaluated the request using the criteria in section 3176E of the City Code and finds it does meet those criteria. So staff is recommending approval of the 4 applications with the following conditions: that the plans submitted for building permits substantially comply with those submitted with these applications, that building permits be obtained within 12 months of the date of the approval, failing which the approval will be deemed null and void. The applicant may request 1 extension of up to 6 months for good cause, and that's by resolution or motion of the City Commission. The garden terrace on the Chabad is up here, and you'll see it's open to Aventura Lakes. The next condition is that there be no amplified music or amplified sound on the rooftop garden terrace. This is to prevent disturbance to that adjacent residential community. And then prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant will enter into the Green Building Program Agreement. and covenant, provide the performance bond, record a unity of title, that there's many lots comprising this parcel, so it'll be joined as one zoning parcel. Record a covenant for shared parking in the parking garage. Record a release, there's an existing FPL easement on the property that'll need to be released before a building permit is issued. Submit a job site construction plan that's required by city ordinance. Provide a copy of the permit from FDOT for those intersection improvements at 210th and Biscayne. Obtain a public works permits from the city for all proposed roadway improvements and the driveways, the new driveways onto Northeast 210th Street. And pay to the city the proffered sum of $50,000 as a contribution towards the street lighting on Northeast 30th Avenue. And then finally, prior to issuance of a temporary certificate of occupancy or certificate of occupancy, the applicant will be required to provide an as-built survey and elevation certificate, provide evidence of compliance with the City Code Section 3142, and that's regarding our police radio system protection, and construct the intersection and roadway improvements as shown on the approved plans. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Joanne, I have to thank you. As always, you give us such a thorough briefing, and we really appreciate it. Let me ask the applicant if they have any comments at this time.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the Commission. My name is Alan Rosenthal. My address is 1 Aventura, and my office windows face the Chabad, and have been since I moved into the building. With me tonight are two of our esteemed rabbis, Rabbi Forta and Rabbi Brusawankin, our architect, Manny, who is a wonderful, wonderful architect who's done a lot of work in the city. And I'm proud to have had him as part of our team. Manny Sinilovsky has been a well-known architect. As a matter of fact, I think he's been around longer than we think he has. We also have with us tonight Dennis Schultz, our traffic engineer. Tonight's really deja vu for me. I'm sure many of you don't remember, but some of you probably do. In 1996, I represented the Chabad when they did their original building. The meetings were held over on 215th Street in the office building, and at that time, Harry was on the commission, and I think Terry was in the audience on many of the occasions when I was there. Unfortunately, in those days, we got the approvals, and then we struggled to find the money to complete the building, and so we needed extensions to complete the building. And one of the last extensions I got, I told the mayor at that time, Arthur Snyder, that if I had to, that I would go out and get a hard hat and a shovel and help them build. Well, as it worked out, we needed an additional extension. And so I arrived at that hearing with a picture. And originally the picture was just me with a shovel and a hard hat, but that didn't look too good. So I decided to get my two young grandchildren, who at the time were probably 7 and 10, or 7 and 9, something like that. And there was a picture of the three of us with hard hats and shovels standing at the Chabad site working. And everybody laughed a lot. And Arthur said, Alan, this is it. There are no more continuances. They've got to finish the building. Fortunately, they finished the building and got their CO, and I think Eric remembers as well because he was there as well. But they've come a long way. They're a busy Chabad. They have a wonderful group of congregants, and this project has been in the making for about 3.5 years. The first year and a half, it was a totally different project. As Eric and Joanne will tell you, it changed, and we now have this project. And but for the aid and assistance of Eric and Joanne and their staff, we would not be here tonight, because we have worked with them constantly, and they have put more effort and more time into this project, and I thank them sincerely. I thank Eric and their staff. They've done an amazing job. And of course, as is usually the case, my presentation pales in comparison to Joanne's. So I'm going to sit down and just say, please approve this project. And if you have any questions of me or my members of my team, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan, so much. I'm going to open the item for public comment and request at this time if there's any members of the public that wish to come up and address us. Robert?
Need the microphone.
We do need the microphone.
All I would say is,
Excuse me. Before you start, I just need to swear you in, Mr. Burns.
yes,
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and
I
nothing but the
do.
truth? Thank you.
I want to endorse the fully you got my memo today, and it got to pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to address us? Okay. If none, I'm going to close this item for public comment, and I'm going to ask if any member of the commission has questions or comments. Commissioner Hawley.
I don't know who to ask. I guess, Joanne, I can ask you just briefly, just a couple of questions. I'm just curious about something. The structure, obviously, you're going to be building the new Chabad before you rip down the old one, I'm assuming. Correct? Okay. And the parking will probably have to be built alongside of that as well to facilitate the congregation? Is that how that's planned? Okay. How is the building and the garage connected? It's hard to tell from this. Is it directly connected, or do they have to go out and back into the garage?
I'll ask the architect to...
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Manny Sinilowski. My address is 1800 Eller Drive, Suite 500, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Commissioner, there is a courtyard that literally separates the garage from the synagogue building. Okay. And purposely, we've provided vertical circulation on the east end of the garage so that it's a number of steps closer, if you will, to the synagogue building, but there is no connectivity between the garage and the synagogue. Those using the garage would have to step out, and for that matter,
but they don't have to go out. Is there a sidewalk going down the south side of the property?
There's a continuous sidewalk running along the length of the whole project, and we've made that sidewalk wider, if you will, and added landscaping, so that whole pedestrian experience and the connection is really an attractive one and a very, very easy one.
So when the service gets out, they can go right into the garage without having to be in danger on the streets?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the intent. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner have any comments or questions? I have a comment, and I want to thank whether it's the architect, Alan, or the rabbi. I love the rooftop garden. I think it adds a wonderful dimension to the project, and I hope it's something that you will use for happy events all the time. If there are no other comments from the commission, I'm going to ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Narodsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley? Commissioner Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Weissman?
Yes, and Mazel Tov.
The motion passes.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is Item 8, an ordinance, first reading, public hearing, and I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the ordinance considered for first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Aventura, Florida, amending the city code by amending Chapter 30, Environment, by creating Article 8, Drone Regulations and Privacy Protections, by creating Section 3210, Drone Restrictions at Public Gatherings, to regulate and restrict drone use in and over outdoor public gatherings, and by creating Section 3211, Protection of Privacy from Drone Use, to provide for a code enforcement mechanism concerning any use of a drone that violates individual privacy as protected by Section 934.50 Florida statutes, providing for applicability, providing for severability, providing for inclusion in code, providing for penalty, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, I want to thank you, city attorney, and anybody who's leaving. Let me just take a break now and let you get up and leave if you're leaving.
You want to stay?
They can stay. We love them. I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of the ordinance on first reading made by Commissioner Cohen.
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Narodsky. I'm going to ask the city attorney to review it.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, as discussed at the prior commission workshop meeting, this ordinance serves to create a new article of Chapter 30 of the City Code and consists of two primary components. First, it creates Section 30-210, which is entitled Drone Restrictions at Public Gatherings, and this will prohibit people from operating a drone at a public gathering that is listed on the city website. The purpose of this is for protection of persons from danger that the use of drones may cause at these public gatherings, which could be a gathering such as a festival at a park or a art show festival at a shopping center parking lot, or it could be a city's exhibition of the outdoor movies that the city shows. This is intended to protect the public safety. The second component is to create Section 30-211, Protection of Privacy from Drone Use, and this gives people a ability to come to the city and to ask the city to institute code enforcement special magistrate proceedings if a drone is used in such a way that it conducts a surveillance upon the person or their property in violation of Florida Statute 934.50. That statute provides a right of a person whose privacy is invaded by a drone to file an action in circuit court. However, that could be a cumbersome task, so instead the city creates an additional remedy, which is a code enforcement remedy that the city can institute on its own or on the complaint of a person who has been the victim of an invasion of privacy by surveillance use of a drone. A third component of this is that it authorizes the city manager to conduct research on the potential purchase and deployment of technological devices and systems that are now being worked on throughout the country to provide for the safe immobilization or neutralization of drones that create a danger to the public or violate the city ordinance or applicable state statute. As I had requested earlier, we will, before this ordinance is actually implemented after second reading, we hope to receive a statement of no objection or an approval from the FAA Office of Regional Counsel, which will be requesting that blessing before implementation of the ordinance, and we'll be proceeding with that request very shortly upon advising of the adoption on first reading. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
I would just like to thank the city attorney for all the hard work you put into this in the protection of our citizens, both their privacy and their safety. Can I have a motion for approval of the ordinance on first reading?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Holtzberg. Can I have a second? Commissioner Cohen. The city attorney already really reviewed it. Are there any questions that the public would like to ask? Okay, seeing as there are none, I'm going to close it for public comment, and I'm going to ask if any member of the commission has questions or comments. Okay, I'm going to at least make a comment. This has been over almost a year in the making, and last 4th of July, the fireworks display, there were a number of drones, unmanned little hovercrafts, vehicles, that were circling around the mall, the roof. It was crowded with people, and I got very concerned about it. We also got numerous complaints from people in condos that the drones were going up and down the building, and people leave there are no curtains on the windows, and it was a privacy issue. So I really want to thank you again. Can I ask the clerk for a roll call vote?
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Narodsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley? Commissioner Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Weissman?
Yes.
The motion passes on first reading.
Thank you. Item 9, second public hearing. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the first ordinance to be considered for second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Aventura, Florida, providing for the submission to the electors of a proposed amendment to City Charter Section 7.06, Charter Revision, revising charter amendment election timing procedures applicable to the periodic charter review process, providing requisite ballot language for submission to the electorate, calling a special election on the proposed amendment to the city charter to be held on Tuesday, the 8th day of November 2016, in conjunction with the general election being held on said date, providing notice of election, providing for election procedure, providing for inclusion in the charter, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Let me ask for a motion for approval of the ordinance on second reading
Motion.
by Vice Mayor Landman. Let me ask for a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Narodsky. I'm going to open the item for public comment, and I'm requesting members of the public to state their name and address. Is there anyone that has a comment or wishes to address it? Seeing as there are none, I'm going to close the item for public comment. I'm going to ask if any members of the commission have any questions or comments about this item. Commissioner Narodsky.
My comment is that this is just great because it hopefully will increase participation. I know that we had the special election not in November, and this is cost saving, and hopefully more folks will participate once it's on the general election ballot. So it's
And
fantastic.
Commissioner, I couldn't agree more. The cost of our special election was over $40,000, and this would save that. I'm going to ask, is there anyone else? I'm going to ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Narodsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley? Commissioner Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Weissman?
Yes.
The motion passes on second and final reading.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the next ordinance to be considered for second reading. Item B.
Thank you, Mayor. On this item and the following one, the City Commission is sitting in its capacity as the Aventura City of Excellence School Board of Directors. An ordinance of the City of Aventura, Florida, adopting the attached charter school operating and capital budget for the Aventura City of Excellence School for fiscal year 2016-2017, July 1 to June 30th, pursuant to Section 4.05 of the City Charter, authorizing expenditure of funds established in the budget, providing for budgetary control, providing for personnel authorization, providing for gifts and grants, providing for amendments, providing for encumbrances, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
May I have someone make a motion for approval of the ordinance on second reading? Commissioner Shelley, second.
Second.
Vice Mayor Landman. I'm going to open the item for public comment. Anyone in the public wish to address the item? Okay, I'm going to close the item for public comment, and I'm going to ask if any member of the commission has questions or comments. Seeing as there are none, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Narodsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley?
Yes.
Commissioner Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Weissman?
Yes.
The motion passes on second and final reading.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the last ordinance to be considered for second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. An ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Aventura, Florida, amending ordinance number 2015-04, which ordinance adopted a charter school operating and capital budget for the Aventura City of Excellence School for fiscal year 2015-2016, July 1, June 30th, by revising the 2015-2016 fiscal year budget document as outlined in Exhibit A attached hereto, authorizing the city manager to do all things necessary to carry out the aims of this ordinance and providing for an effective date.
May I have a motion for approval of the ordinance on second reading?
Motion. Second. whatever.
Made by Commissioner Shelley, seconded by Commissioner Holtzberg. I'm going to open the item for public comment. Anyone in the public wish to address the item? I'm going to close this item for the public comment and ask if any of the commissioners have questions or comments. Vice Mayor Landman.
This is a great item. If the city manager can just explain a little bit about the where the money's going and where the money's coming from, I think everybody will be pleased to hear about some bonuses our teachers are receiving.
So this is a budget amendment for $67,000. What it does is it incorporates revenue coming from the state for the Florida's Best and Brightest Teacher Scholarship Program, which was approved by the state legislation. And basically it rewards classroom teachers who have been evaluated as highly effective and have earned college entrance scores on their SAT or their ACT at or above the 80th percentile. We're fortunate enough that 8 of our teachers at the school have been granted this scholarship.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the commission?
Yes, I'd like to make a
Commissioner
comment.
Holtzberg.
I want to congratulate the city manager and staff. I think the budget was absolutely wonderful. I read it cover to cover, and it was perfect, really, and you didn't leave a thing out. I just have to compliment you. One last time, you're the best. That's it.
Thank you so much. If no one else has a comment, I'm going to ask the clerk for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Holtzberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Narotsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Shelley? Commissioner Weinberg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Landman?
Yes.
Mayor Weissman?
Yes,
The motion passes on second and final reading.
and thank you. We have no resolutions at the public hearing at this time. Do we have any reports from the commissioners? Vice Mayor Landman.
Yes. This is just, we pass this on the consent agenda, but I think this is a great initiative that's coming to us later this year in November. We're going to be reinstating the Green Farmers Market that we had earlier with additional, hopefully more vendors and more options. So once the summer heat is cooling down a little bit, we'll have that back, and we hope to see, the community out there enjoying this service.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Then at this time, I'm going to ask our state representative, Joe Geller, to please come up and provide some comments to us.
We have to watch the Heat game, 5 minutes.
Say it louder,
Joe, 5 minutes, we have to watch the Heat game.
I was told something about not droning on, that you have new drone legislation, so I'll try to keep that in mind. Good evening, Mayor. Congratulations, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager, Mr. Attorney, Madam Clerk, and everyone that's here, and congratulations, Mazel Tov on the temple. I want to give you a brief update on our recently concluded legislative session, and I will try and keep it brief. There are a few things, though, that are worth talking about. We had some advances. Happy to say that this session went a little better than the one in 2015, which, as you know, ended in a little bit of discord. My body, the House, adjourned early. They had to go back for a special session. They had special sessions on reapportionment. It was a little bit of a mess. Not so bad this year. So there still are some significant health care issues. And first and foremost is still that same issue we did not address, expanding Medicaid. And that is a real problem. The federal government is going to eliminate this low-income pool, the LIP, and we're going to be looking at having to find the money for that unless we see the light and accept this money from the federal government. Nonetheless, a couple of things were done. In particular, one bill now gives authority to nurse practitioners and physician's assistants to prescribe additional medications, including some controlled substances. So that's a good thing with our healthcare crisis, letting these very highly trained individuals be able to do things that they've done hundreds and sometimes thousands of times before. That's a step forward. Also very important, the program we call Kid Care that provides medical insurance for children was significantly expanded this year. A very good thing. I serve on education on the committee, and in fact I'm the ranking Democrat on K-12. We continue to have some issues that have arisen in the rubric of choice. Obviously, charter schools are a significant force in our state. Not all of them are like your charter school, which, along with, for instance, Pembroke Pines, these municipally run charter schools that are not principally about the profit motive are, in my opinion, a very good thing. But there are some issues that came up regarding so-called school choice, and one that would have provided, I think, an unfair split for capital outlay money between charter schools and between our traditional public schools. At least the Senate helped fix it, so it's a more equitable split and there are more controls over it. Another issue I was very involved in that was, frankly, was disappointing was the move to require recess in our elementary schools. The House was overwhelmingly for it. Almost every senator was for it. One senator succeeded in blocking it. Unfortunately, he was the chair of the Senate Education Committee, and he was in a position to block it. And he said, well, listen, I'll be gone next year, pass it next year, and I hope we will. I think we will. I'm particularly pleased that I was able to get a bill passed through the House, adopted by the Senate, signed into law by the governor, not so easy as a freshman Democrat, and it is an anti-bullying bill. And that's a real problem in our schools, as you may know. And this bill, we've had law that said every school district had to have an anti-bullying policy. Unfortunately, in some cases, those would be adopted, put on the shelf, and they gathered dust. Under the bill that I sponsored and that got passed, Senator Ring in the Senate, now every school district has to review and update that bullying policy at least every 3 years. They can do it every year, but they must do it every 3 years, and we've made principals responsible both for creating a reporting procedure and also for making sure that people who need them have the resources available and a list of programs and things that can help if you're being subject to bullying. So I'm very happy that happened. Finally, in education, as you know, there's some publicity about how we increased funding for education, and that is true. It wasn't quite as dramatic, but at least we're moving in the right direction. However, one thing, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, Mayor, you could tell us a little more about this than we know, but there's something called the required local effort, which are property taxes that are imposed on all of us at the local level to help pay for school funding. This year, the legislature rolled back required local effort to the tune of $428 million. That means real tax relief for every property taxpayer. But what's important here is that in this case, the schools didn't suffer. The legislature found that money from state funds and replaced that money, so not a dollar of it was lost for education funding, and some other money was added. So we both combined property tax relief and still some additional money to schools. I think that's a good thing. Another good thing, after a miserable failure last year on the environment, where we all spoke and adopted Amendment 1 and the legislature in 2015 did little to nothing, this year there was a real attempt to fund that. A minimum of $200 million every year from Amendment 1 money will be going to protect the Everglades, and another minimum $50 million to protect springs in the state of Florida. We could do more, and I hope we will, but that's real money, and that's a real start. And at the same time, we were able to block these bills for so-called fracking fracturing that is a real danger to our environment. So some progress on the environmental front. We had a surprise this year from the U.S. Supreme Court that struck down our death penalty. As a result, Florida had to adopt a new program. Now, I happen to be an opponent to the death penalty, and I think it's wrong frankly, on moral grounds. Nonetheless, the death penalty law we have in the state of Florida today is fairer than what we had a year ago, because instead of a mere majority on a jury, it now requires at least a 10-2 vote, and judges can no longer override jury recommendations. And in fact, there also has to be unanimity as to aggravating factors. That was a step forward, and in addition, on the field of justice, civil justice, we were able to block these ridiculous guns on campus bills and this open carry bill that would have made our streets like Dodge City. You know, everybody walking around with people with holsters, guns showing, just a terrible bill. I'm happy to say that was blocked. And my colleague just to the west, Representative Chevron Jones, was able to get a bill through that helped significantly to provide more police body cameras. I think those are a good thing. They protect both sides. They allow for the truth to come out. If you're a victim of a policeman who does the wrong thing, it'll be shown, but it equally protects police officers from unfair accusations, and the camera shows if they didn't do anything wrong. So one last one that I want to comment on, we've had some, in my opinion, over the last few years, we've moved in the wrong direction frequently on letting people exercise the right to vote. And there have been, frankly, voter suppression laws that have resulted in some of these long lines we've seen. They're not accidental. This year, although we didn't eliminate voter ID laws, at least we moved in the right direction. There was a bill that came out of the House that dramatically expanded what kind of ID can be used to go and prove you are who you say you are. Now again, voter impersonation, it's truly a non-existent problem, but at least we've made it easier for people to vote by making any kind of government-issued ID suitable. Last thing I want to talk to you about is the budget. Last year I voted against the budget, and there were a lot of reasons, including a just ridiculous tax cut last year. They cut what's called the communication services tax, and for every $100 you spent on your cell phone or cable TV, they gave you, and I'm not making this up, a 67-cent a month tax cut. 67 cents. Yet there are so many millions of us. By the way, if you were only spending $60 because you were on a budget, that tax cut was 42 cents a month. Don't spend it all in one place. But that blew a $400 million hole in the state budget. Money that we desperately could have used for all kinds of things, not just education or our environment, but to help keep mentally ill people out of our jails, where, by the way, in the field of mental health, we made some real strides in this year. Well, there was an attempt this year to also have a huge tax cut for people who needed it least. But the legislature didn't go along this year. There was a very modest proposal to help manufacturing. It wasn't a lot of money. It was a lot less than what had been asked. And when the final budget came for a vote, the House voted for it 119 to 1. And by the way, the one was not, one of our very liberal Democrats. The one vote against it was a Tea Party Republican from Melbourne who votes no on everything. And it went to the Senate and passed 40 to nothing. Some people have said, maybe correctly, that this was a message to our governor to not swing such a meat axe on vetoing projects to help local communities. And in fact, apparently he got that message because he vetoed something like half of what he'd done the year before. The message was that the legislature was united in a bipartisan way. Doesn't happen a lot, but it did this year, and prepared to override vetoes if the governor got carried away. I have to tell you, our House Democratic leader, who's outgoing, he's term limited, said that he'd been in the House for 8 years, and this was the first time that he'd voted for a budget. So that show of unanimity was a little unexpected. We were very pleased about it. We finished on time. We got done what we needed to. Obviously, you could always do more, but I think we were responsible, and we did make progress on things like mental health and making sure that what they call the no wrong door approach. So a responsible budget, and I'm glad to see that at least this time we were able to get our job done. So with that said, I'm happy to report to you, Madam Mayor, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them, but if not, I appreciate your time and attention and the opportunity to come before you, but most especially the opportunity to represent you and all the fine citizens of Aventura.
Representative Geller, thank you. Let me ask if there's anyone in the public that has any comments or questions of our representative. Okay, seeing as there are none, I will ask the commission if they have any questions or comments for our representative. Commissioner Narodsky.
Hi, thank you very much for coming. Just a quick question. You mentioned the voter ID laws. Currently, if somebody can't afford to get an ID, does the government provide that to them, or how do they obtain that? Okay.
Yeah, and now if you have a student ID or a military ID or any other kind, even if it's not a driver's license, there's a charge to get a driver's license. But if you just want an ID card and you cannot afford it, there are provisions that assist you with that. So it's still discriminatory, but.
So you feel that it's still discriminatory even if they're providing it free of charge?
The problem is that many people don't have them. They're not so easy to get, particularly if you're elderly. Being able to come up with a birth certificate, you may have lived your whole life here, doesn't mean that you necessarily have that birth certificate still in your hand. You could have been here for, you know, it's lost in time, and they're not always easy to replace. And then the truth, as I said, is there just is no real evidence of voter impersonation. People just don't go and show up and say, you know, produce some non-picture ID and say, yeah, this is me. I mean, the documented cases, you could count on your fingers. It's made up.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, and again, Representative Geller, we really want to thank you for coming here and giving us an update on the past legislative session, and I know you're getting ready for the next legislative session. Is there any other business?
Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing as there's none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Commissioner Holzberg, seconded by Commissioner Cohn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.